All right, get this. Picture a potato. But not just any potato one that looks more like, I don't know, a piece of ginger.
Intriguing, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's happening right now over in Arambagh, India. These farmers, they're getting a harvest that's, well, let's just say it's not your average spud.
And that's putting it mildly, from what I've heard.
Definitely. And you know me, got to get to the bottom of things.
Yeah.
So today we're taking a deep dive into this whole bizarre potato situation.
A deep dive, huh? I like it. Should be fascinating.
Absolutely. We've got reports from the farmers themselves. They're pretty concerned, and I think we all should be too. I mean, who knows what could be going on?
Well, that's what we're here to figure out, right?
Exactly. So let's jump right in. These potatoes, they're not just a little misshapen. From what I understand, they're being described as looking like, well, ginger root, clay dolls. I even saw one report comparing them to alien artifacts.
Alien artifacts. Now, that's a bit out there, don't you think?
Okay, maybe that one's a bit of a stretch. But you get the picture, right? They're seriously strange looking.
I do get the picture. It's certainly a vivid image. But jokes aside, for the farmers involved, this is a very real problem. We're talking about hundreds of farmers, livelihoods at stake here.
And it's not just about the weird shapes either, right?
Yeah.
I mean, are these things even safe to eat?
That's the million-dollar question. And as of right now, nobody seems to have a clear answer. Even the farmers are hesitant to eat them, which is understandable. I mean, would you want to take a bite out of something that looks like it came from another planet?
I think I'd pass on that too. So while we're all trying to figure out what's going on with these potatoes, the big question is, what caused it in the first place?
Right, and it looks like the finger might be pointed at the seeds.
Ah, the seeds, huh? Tell me more.
Well, it seems the farmers all got their seeds from the same place, a local trader who in turn got them from Punjab.
So, bad batch of seeds, maybe?
Could be, but of course the trader's saying it's not his fault, it's got to be the supplier up in Punjab. Classic blame game, right?
Oh, for sure. So we've got strange-looking potatoes, worried farmers, and now a potential seed supplier controversy brewing. This is getting juicy.
It is indeed. And to add another layer to all of this, there's the government's response, or perhaps lack thereof, depending on who you ask.
Oh, right, the government. What's the latest on that front?
Well, from what I've gathered, the agriculture marketing minister was caught a bit off guard by the whole situation. Apparently, he had no idea about any of this until recently. Not exactly inspiring confidence, is it?
Not exactly, but they're going to look into it.
That's what they're saying. Meanwhile, the agriculture department folks over in the Hooghly district, where Arambagh is located, they seem to be taking things a bit more seriously. They're actually out there visiting the farms, trying to assess the damage.
Okay, so at least someone's on the ball. It sounds like we've got a multi-pronged problem here.
Absolutely. We've got the immediate concern about the safety of these potatoes and the potential economic fallout for the farmers.
Right, not to mention trying to track down the root cause of the problem in the first place.
Exactly. And all of that is going to take some serious investigation.
Well, that's why we're here, right?
Yeah.
To dig a little deeper and hopefully shed some light on this whole potato predicament.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So where do we start? You know, it really makes you wonder, what could make a potato go so wonky? Like, what's going on beneath the surface that could cause this kind of transformation?
Right, like is it something in the soil or maybe some kind of weird weather pattern?
Well, those are certainly possibilities. We can't rule out environmental factors, you know, things like extreme temperatures or, say, nutrient deficiencies in the soil. Those can definitely have an impact on how a plant grows.
Well, for sure. Like if you don't give a plant what it needs, it's going to struggle. And maybe that comes out in funky looking produce.
Exactly. And potatoes, they're pretty sensitive to their growing conditions, so it wouldn't be surprising if something in the environment was playing a role here.
But then there's that whole thing about the seeds too, right? Like what if it's not just the environment, but something off with the seeds themselves?
That's the other big piece of the puzzle, isn't it? And it's definitely something we need to consider because if there's some kind of genetic issue with the seeds, well, that could explain why we're seeing this problem on such a large scale.
I was just thinking about that. Like if it was just a few wonky potatoes here and there, maybe you could chalk it up to a random chance, but we're talking about hundreds of farms affected. That's got to be more than just a coincidence.
I agree, and that points to something more systematic, something that's impacting a whole batch of seeds, and that could be a real game changer for the farmers.
For sure. I mean, imagine you're a farmer, you plant your crop, you're expecting a nice harvest, and then boom, you get a field full of potatoes that look like they belong in a modern art museum.
It's a nightmare scenario, really, and it really underscores how important seed quality is in agriculture.
Big time. And It makes me wonder if there's enough oversight in the seed supply chain. Like, are there adequate checks and balances to ensure that farmers are getting what they paid for?
That's a great question. And it's something that deserves a whole deep dive of its own, honestly, because the seed industry is complex. There are so many players involved, and it's not always easy to track down the source of a problem.
I bet. And in a situation like this, it's the farmers who end up paying the price. Literally.
Absolutely. They're the ones on the front lines facing the uncertainty and the potential financial losses. And it's a stark reminder of how vulnerable they are to factors beyond their control.
I was reading about one farmer, Sid Sarkar. He invested a ton of money in his crop, like 400,000 rupees.
Uh-huh.
And now he's facing the possibility of losing it all because of these bizarre potatoes. It's heartbreaking.
It really is. And his story isn't unique. Sadly, there are countless farmers around the world facing similar challenges, whether it's due to unpredictable weather, pests, or in this case, potentially faulty
It
seeds.
makes you realize that the food we eat, it doesn't just magically appear on our plates. There's a whole chain of events and people involved. And when something goes wrong, it can have a ripple effect throughout the entire system.
You got it. And I think that's one of the key takeaways from this whole situation. It's a reminder to appreciate the complexity of our food systems and to acknowledge the hard work and dedication of the farmers who make it all possible.
So while the scientists are busy trying to figure out what caused these potatoes to go haywire, what about the farmers? I mean, what are they supposed to do with all these, let's call them unconventional potatoes?
That's the big question, isn't it? They can't exactly sell them at the market, at least not in their current state.
Right, because who's going to want to buy a potato that looks like that? I mean, I get that we should be more open to imperfections, but there are limits, right?
I hear you, and I think it's a balance. Like, on the one hand, we don't want to perpetuate this idea that only perfect looking produce is acceptable. But on the other hand, there are consumer expectations to consider.
It's a tough one, for sure, and it puts the farmers in a really difficult position. They've got all these potatoes. They need to make a living. But what are their options?
Well, there's been some talk about selling the potatoes to food processing companies, the ones that make things like chips and French fries.
Oh, yeah, because in that case, the shape of the potato wouldn't really matter as long as it can be processed, right?
Exactly. And it could be a win-win situation. The farmers could still get some revenue from their crop, and the processing companies could potentially get a good deal on potatoes.
But wouldn't there still be concerns about safety? I mean, even if the potatoes are going to be processed, they still need to be safe to eat, right?
Absolutely. That's non-negotiable, and that's why the scientific investigation is so important. They need to determine if there are any health risks associated with these potatoes, regardless of their appearance.
And what about the whole consumer perception thing? I mean, would people be okay with eating French fries made from these, well, let's just say unique potatoes?
It's a valid concern, for sure, and it might require some clever marketing to get people on board.
I can already see the ad campaigns. Embrace the odd potato, perfectly imperfect fries, something like that.
I love it. Got to spin it into a positive, right? But seriously, I think if the processing companies can assure consumers that the potatoes are safe and that the final product is still delicious, I think people might be willing to give it a try.
And hey, maybe it could even become a selling point. Like, these fries are made from special potatoes that have a unique story. They're a little different, but they're still packed with flavor.
Exactly. Turn it into a talking point, something that sets them apart from the competition.
So it sounds like there might be a light at the end of the tunnel for these farmers, even though it's a bit of an unexpected path.
I think so. And it just goes to show that sometimes you got to get creative and find solutions that you might not have considered before.
And, it's not just about finding a way to sell these potatoes. It's about addressing the root cause of the problem so that this doesn't happen again.
You got it. And that's where the government and the scientific community have a crucial role to play.
Absolutely, because if we can figure out what went wrong, maybe we can prevent it from happening again, and that would be a huge win for farmers everywhere.
I couldn't agree more. And, this whole situation, it really highlights the importance of collaboration. Like, we need scientists, policymakers, farmers, and consumers all working together to create a more sustainable and resilient food system.
It's a team effort, for
Yeah.
sure, and hopefully this deep dive into the world of odd potatoes will spark some important conversations and lead to positive change down the line.
I hope so too, because at the end of the day, we all have a stake in this. We all need access to safe and affordable food, and that means supporting the farmers who make it all happen.
It's kind of amazing to think that something so weird, these misshapen potatoes, could actually end up being a good thing in the end.
Yeah, it's like that old saying, every cloud has a silver lining. or however it goes.
Exactly. Like maybe this whole thing could be a chance for some real creativity, especially in the food world.
Oh, absolutely. I can totally see that happening.
Mm. Right. Like imagine chefs getting their hands on these potatoes and just going wild, coming up with all sorts of new dishes and recipes.
Oh, I bet they'd have a field day with it. All those unique shapes and textures. It'd be like a whole new culinary frontier.
And who knows, maybe these Arambagh odd potatoes would become like a sought-after delicacy, something really special.
It could totally happen. People love a good food story, and this one is definitely unique.
And think about the farmers. They could turn this whole situation around, not just recover their losses, but actually create something new and exciting.
It'd be a real testament to their resilience and ingenuity, turning a challenge into an opportunity.
I love that it's like taking lemons and making, well, not lemonade, but something even better.
Exactly. And it's not just about the food itself, it's about changing the way we think about imperfections.
Oh, totally. Like, why do we have to be so obsessed with everything looking perfect, especially when it comes to food?
It's a good question, and I think this whole potato situation really highlights that. It's like a wake-up call to be more accepting of diversity in all its forms.
Yeah, and to appreciate the beauty in the unexpected, even if it's a little bit wonky.
Well said. And it's not just about aesthetics, it's about reducing food waste too.
Oh, for sure. I mean, think about all the perfectly good produce that gets thrown away just because it doesn't look right.
It's crazy, and this could be a chance to really shift that mindset, to show people that it's okay to embrace the odd, the quirky, the imperfect.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of Arambagh's odd potatoes, what are some key takeaways for our listeners?
Well, I think first and foremost, it's a reminder that even something as simple as a potato can hold a lot of surprises.
Yeah, and that the food we eat, it's not just some random thing that appears on our plates. There's a whole story behind it, all system that connects us all.
And that system, it's complex and it's fragile and it's facing a lot of challenges from climate change to economic pressures.
So what can we do as individuals to support a more sustainable and resilient food system?
It starts with being informed, with understanding where our food comes from and the challenges faced by those who grow it.
And then making choices that align with our values, whether that's supporting local farmers, reducing food waste, or being open to trying new and different things.
Exactly. And this whole odd potato situation is a great example of that. It's about thinking outside the box, being creative, and finding solutions that benefit everyone.
Absolutely. It's about embracing the unexpected and seeing the potential for positive change, even in the face of adversity.
Well said. And I think that's a great note to end on.
I agree. So to our listeners, we say this. The next time you see a potato that's a little bit different, don't be afraid to give it a chance. You might just be surprised by what you discover.
And who knows, you might even help to spark a culinary revolution.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those deep dives going.